To start, I'm not an expert on the Armored Core series. To be honest, I know next to nothing about it other than the basic facts. There are mechs controlled by pilots and they go bang bang, clash clash, and they're pretty cool while doing so. Aside from these facts, I started to learn about the details of this universe as I played this latest installment, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. And believe me, it was exactly what I thought it was, and much more on top of it as well. As it had been more than a decade before the release of the last game in this series, and since the developer From Software has, not to exaggerate, but changed the entire gaming climate, the franchise of Armored Core has received a vast number of new eyes on it, one of them being me. The game starts, and after a short cutscene explaining the overall state of Rubicon, the planet you will be in for most of the game, you are straight in. The world is drip fed to you, but you get to know the basics very quickly. Humanity is advanced, and they have reached other planets, using them for resources. Corporations are prevalent in this universe in a highly dystopian sense, and these corporations have been fighting over the planet Rubicon 3 for a very particular reason. The planet Rubicon is home to coral, an energy source that is very, very precious and expensive. The game is set after a certain cataclysm had happened in the solar system Rubicon 3 is in, thought to have destroyed the coral, but as it was discovered that coral was still there on the planet, the corporations kept fighting over it, and you, a nameless mercenary, an altered, modified human with a sole purpose of piloting mechs, are in the middle of the conflict between these corporations. Balaam Industries and Arquebus Corp, Rubicon Liberation Front, and the Planetary Closure Administration. You, as a character, are a silent protagonist, and Walter, the person who is giving you orders and quests through the game, seems to be the leading direction for your motivations and actions. However, as the game progresses, you slowly realize that you do have a choice, and slowly gain the ability to choose your own way through this complicated war on this cold planet. The game is fast paced, extremely so, but also grounded in its weight. The mechs feel heavy and swift, the explosions are immensely bright, and the controls are, as expected from Software, the very best they could possibly be. You are the mech, and as you grab a tight hold of the controller to maneuver around countless bullets as you position your mech, shoot, jump, fly, dodge, you feel like you are in the heart of the machine, with your mind connected to the cold, light grey steel. I have never played an Armored Core game before this one, nor any mech combat games in general, but it took around a few seconds of combat to instantly understand the hype around them. The combat and movement reminded me of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice due to the fact that everything was so airtight that how well the game played was still impressive to think about, even after a dozen hours of gameplay. You will face small mechs, big guns, different enemies that will require different styles of approach from you, big bosses, or similar mech pilots to you with similar and sometimes even better skills and resources than you, and every time you manage to get them just before they get you, the rush of adrenaline you feel is enough to make you feel like you could move planets. Enough of the combat, although you really can't get enough of it in this game, let's talk about other things as well. Things that you wouldn't expect to play a big part in a game like this, like music. The music was very low key, not overbearing at all, even in big boss fights, and the amount of style and characteristics the music went through throughout the game was immensely impressive. I expected mostly mechanical EDM tracks, but I got something orchestral, triumphant, and human at parts, alongside that cold, downbeat techno. The graphics of the game are where they need to be. They are not impressive when you stand still and look at the models and textures, but like a good racing game, when everything is in motion, the game couldn't look more impressive. Combined with good optimization, almost bug-free gameplay, and great effects, the direction in both graphics and sound, including voice acting, everything was simply great. Even though the voice acting in certain parts felt too forward and, overemphasizing the characteristics of the people talking, I felt that those aspects added to the character of the game more than anything. The game is short, with no optional content other than a few standout examples. The game features an area mode with more than 20 combat encounters, most of the encounters being actual mechs from the game. I thought the arena was a great addition and provides very enjoyable combat situations that I might not have experienced in the campaign. In addition, there was also multiplayer combat mode, although I did not touch it. I was never too big on Souls PvP, and I felt as if this would be more of the same, with highly optimized builds crushing me and so on, but I would wager it's worth a try if you're interested in testing your skills against real people. Let's talk about optimizing since I mentioned it. The game promises the player combat, but as much as that, it promises optimization of your mech to help you in set combat. You can change your weapons and different parts of your mech's body, like arm, legs, and so on. The optimization is great and it is detailed, but also felt like it was a system you could mostly ignore to beat the game, which could be considered a positive maybe, but when I decided on a build very early on in the game, I barely changed anything after that aside from some difficult combat encounters where I tweaked some things around. I thought that was a shame since the options are really there, from making you a very agile and dodge heavy mech to making you a literal tank on rails that rains down rockets on your enemies. Not to make connections too much to Souls games, but it is inevitable since the game can feel very much like those games in certain bosses where you time your dodges, attack when you can, keep strategic distance, and trial and error your way through difficult encounters. Although such encounters did not occur too frequently for me but when they did, I couldn't remember the last time I enjoyed the combat in a game as much as I did during those encounters. So I don't really have an option on how mech customization could play a bigger role in the game than it did for me. I just feel like it should have played a bigger role. When I did trial and error on my weight and weapon times to beat a difficult boss, it felt as though the system was great, and I think having it be utilized more, like in one mission where you have to have a certain weapon on you to kill a boss, could have worked out even better. The game takes you to places, combat, and the story hand in hand. The locations are big and detailed, and your fights in these locations get bigger, more blockbustery as you progress. The set pieces are great, the story progression is great, and real progress is felt throughout the game. However, to explain the progress of development in both combat and story, I have to get into spoilers a bit, so be careful from this point onward. Okay, so after your illegal landing on Rubicon as a freelancer mercenary, you take the cold sign of a fallen mech, Raven. You're caught up in a coral explosion early on in the game after a few quests, and your consciousness is tied to someone in the coral, which is your step into understanding that the coral is alive and somehow has people inside of it as a certain type of energy. This person, Air, will be talking to you throughout the game, as anchor for your freedom of choice. Air wants to leave the coral alone, but Walter seems to want something else. As the game nears a close, you understand what that is. Walter, due to a complicated past, wants to destroy the coral and burn it again like it was once burned. The corporations want the coral for themselves, and Air, like the Liberation Front, wants a middle ground where the people and the coral can coexist. It will be up to you to decide which choice you make, the enemies you face, and the difficult things you will have to do will be based on those choices. To give an example of material progression in the game, you are given an old mech to escape in a late quest because your main mech is taken away from you. And as you use that old mech, you realize how far you have come, how strong you are, and how the silent progression of your skill and your mech's abilities have taken shape to make you a competent pilot ready to take on the strongest foes throughout your few hours in the game. And I mean a few, since I managed to finish the game in a dozen hours. It is not a long game, but it is a journey that is fun, and for lack of a better word really, it's pretty cool. You start your career as a mercenary working with the corporations, working with whoever pays the most. But as you progress, you gain your own goals. Whatever happens, you are done with the corporations after a certain point, and you are to draw your own journey to an ending you strive for. To summarize, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon stretches a lot of itches for me. Itches for great combat and a good story. It is fun to play and makes you keep coming back to just enjoy what it has to offer. The characters it presents are presented well without showing any of their faces and only giving their personality through voices and how they customize their mechs functionally and also cosmetically, much like how you can as well. There's a lot of content with arena and multiplayer, with the ability for new game plus, different endings and choices and so on, without overbearing the player with content and keeping everything tight. Such an optimized, virtually bug-free game with fast-paced, blood-pumping combats needs to be played by anyone who likes the genre, and even by people who know nothing about the series or the genre, much like me.